Okay, thank you very much. And now we will move on to the question and answer session. Let me start with the first question about the divided states of America. The question says, division in the United States is a misfortune of the world. Is there any way to improve this situation? If economic disparity is driving this division, is the only solution economic growth and the reduction of the inequality in the U.S.? This is the question and from the audience. And same question is, it seems like the Democrats and the Republicans are living on the completely different planets. Is this cultural polarization getting worse, or have these differences always existed? So could you answer the question about the disparity or the division of the two parties or the two groups of people?
Look, those are very good questions. Thank you. I think, unfortunately, we know from a series of values questions that have been asked periodically of Republicans and self-identified Democrats that their differences on values have grown wider over time. And that while the Democrats have moved further to the left, Republicans have moved much further to the right. So it's not encouraging that they're drifting apart, not beginning to drift back together. I think that even if Donald Trump were to lose, there will be, somewhere, 47 or 48% of Americans will have voted for him. And, some smaller percentage of that, maybe 30% or whatever, are true Make America Great supporters. And ambitious politicians will try to seize that group and run with it. And so there's going to be a structural incentive to maintain that kind of polarization. If Harris loses, I don't think we'll have the same kind of, second guessing because that we might have had if after Hillary lost or whatever. I think that Harris is not so well defined with the American public that they say, well, we should abandon progressivism. She was too progressive, or we should, she was too centrist or whatever. I don't think that's going to be the problem, which would bring the Democrats maybe back towards the middle a bit, but I don't think that's going to happen. The question about whether this is only about economics, I think, is one that we have to think hard about. I was trained as an economist. I was an economics journalist for 25 years. I certainly believe that economics is very, very, very important. But I think sometimes we overestimate that. Yes, I think if inequality was declining in America, if people in the lower 20% of the population or 30% were doing much better, all of these cultural issues would get a little easier. Because in part, it is the combination of people whose lives are economically not working out the way they might have hoped. And at the same time, then they have to deal with all these other issues. They have to deal with the fact that I'm a man and I'm competing against women in the workplace, but my father never had to compete against women in the workplace. Or I have to compete against more and more of these immigrants, and that my father didn't need to have to do that. Or, so things where the cultural changes in America accentuate the economic differences. So yes, we should absolutely have a reduction in inequality. I think it would make dealing with the cultural differences easier, but I don't think it would make them all go away.
Thank you very much. I had additional question concerning the division. How do you foresee that? Why are there no third or fourth parties emerging in the U.S. despite political division? And another question is, it is shocked that one-third of the Republicans may accept the violence if they lose. Do you think that this result may affect on the swing people to vote more to Trump rather than Harris? If so, what can the Democrats do to avoid this situation? So such kind of a mess, internal mess.
Yeah, no, and well, in terms of the violence issue, I think even though it's a third of Republicans say that violence, and it's only 8% of Democrats, but it's still 8% of Democrats say that women need violence. But that doesn't mean that all of them would resort to violence. But I think it is a painful reminder that, we are a large country. Well over 100 million people are likely to vote. And even 10% of those people, let alone 37% of those people, would be a lot of people. And we are the best armed nation in the world. So these people have guns. So I do think it's something we have to be very, very worried about. The second question was what? The first question you asked was
yes,
about
right. And let's move on to the next question. Sorry for that. The next question about the international world and the United States. The one question says the division in the United States is a misfortune for the world. Is there any way to improve this situation if I took the wrong one. So what about the United States and the international world? Yes, if President Trump is re-elected, do you think the Ukraine will be abandoned? What about Taiwan? And the same questions on that. If you have political power vacuum after the election, unfortunately, we have Japan may have same kind of political problem. What do you think this situation bring to the Pacific peace? So these two questions.
That is a great question that I had not thought of for a minute. I'm right. I mean, I think there's probably a potential, and you in Tokyo would know much better than I would, that we won't know who is the next prime minister and the ruling coalition for a while, if at all. We certainly are not going to know who's the next president for, I would imagine, a week or two. That is a situation where foreign actors, China, Russia, North Korea, might try to cause some trouble because they would think that we're distracted internally and incapable of making decisions. I think they'd be wrong about that, but they'd be right that the public in America, at least I know, is going to be distracted. We will look weak as we kind of flounder around to decide who actually won this election. That can't help our soft power at all. If Trump is elected, he's said he's going to solve the Ukraine war on day one. Assuming he is serious about this, and one thing I would urge your listeners to accept, that we have to assume what he says is what he's going to do. Yes, it is true. He never built a wall along the Mexican border. He never got the Mexicans to pay for the wall. So he says things that don't actually come to pass. But if we just assume that he's speaking without any relationship to what he would actually do, we could be very, very surprised at the end of this when he actually does what he says he's going to do. And I think we have to, it's incumbent upon us to accept the fact that he's going to try to do a quick deal with Putin to end the Ukraine war. And frankly, the only way you could do a quick deal to end the Ukrainian war is to reward the Russians for what they have done. And to create a situation where the Russians will retool and re-equip, rearm, and be ready to do this again in 10 years. So I think that what he is suggesting is classic 1938 appeasement. You know, if we just give Hitler what he wants, he'll be satisfied. If we just give Putin what he wants, he'll be satisfied. I think it's very dangerous, but I think that's exactly what Trump will try to do. What he would do in the Middle East, I think, is not at all clear because he's very close to Netanyahu. He has just in the last week told Netanyahu, do what you have to do. On the other hand, I'm sure he would love to be the peacemaker in the Middle East. But even a deal maker like Trump has to have somebody in Hamas or Hezbollah who he can deal with. And those people aren't necessarily going to be willing to deal. But he's certainly not going to pressure Netanyahu to make a deal. And Taiwan is to my mind, the big question mark because Trump has threatened not to defend Taiwan unless they pay the United States a lot of money, or he says that they should build all their chips in the United States. On the other hand, he prides himself on being a tough man, and tough to China. I think in part what he would do around Taiwan would depend on how Xi tries to handle him. And if Xi flatters him, if Xi, invites him to Beijing for the biggest military parade in history, bear in mind, Donald Trump is somebody who went to see Kim Jong-un 3 times and got nothing out of it. So that may impact what's going on around Taiwan. I mean, one of the bigger issues that I think we need to think about is, the Biden administration, along with the Japanese government, the Korean government, the Philippine government, the Australian government, have been effectively very slowly building an Asian NATO. They don't call it that. They desperately don't want to call it that. But in essence, we're stitching together a security alliance. And whether Donald Trump would be willing to pursue that, he would obviously demand of the Japanese, you pay more money for defense. That goes without saying. But whether he would actually be interested in that, whether he would be committed to that, I think we just don't know.
Thank you very much, Bruce. The time is running out, but allow me to pick up one more question about Japan and the United States. The question says, how will the relationship between Japan and the United States evolve moving forward? What kind of risks from the United States should Japan be prepared for now?
Well, I think there's 2 issues. I mean, one, if Trump is elected, I think we have to anticipate he will demand that Japan spend more money on defense. We don't know how he's going to deal with North Korea. We don't know how he's going to deal with China, the Taiwan issue. And that's going to cause anxiety in Japan, without a doubt. if Harris is elected, I think it's a different set of issues. I think she will be very steadfast in defense of the Asian allies and continue to build this Asian NATO, even though, as I said, they'll never call it that. But what we cannot expect from Harris is much initiative on trade. I think that the Democratic Party is so wary of more trade liberalization, of trade deals, of trade agreements, even that we're not likely to see a renewed American initiative in that area, which is unfortunate. What you won't see, though, is a 20% tariff on every import to the United States, and so Japan can be thankful for that. Now, the specific Japan issue that we all kind of follow here, or at least I do, is will the U.S. government allow Nippon Steel to buy U.S. steel? And the Trump people have not made a big deal out of this, but I assume they'd be against it. Harris has said she's against it, as was Biden. My personal view is that's crazy. If U.S. Steel wants to sell itself to Nippon Steel, that we should be thankful that Nippon Steel is willing to buy it. But that may be a difficult one for Harris to walk back.
Okay, thank you very much. Your excellent presentation and comments. Now it's time to go to the seminar. Thank you very much again, Bruce. And you're really the master of physician of society. You can diagnose the society by using your poll data, and you can see the health condition of the United States and the world as well. Thank you so much for your very excellent presentation and contribution for RIETI and Japan. Thank you very much again for your participation in our BBL webinar. Bruce, have a good night.
Take care.
Yes, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.